A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hey, True Crime News fans, just wanted to let you know that we are going to be changing our release day for the podcast. We are moving to Tuesdays. We are making the move in conjunction with our all-new TV series, which is premiering on September 9th. Many of you have shared that you have a routine as to when you listen or when you watch. So if Friday is still your day, don't worry, the podcast will be waiting for you. So starting next week, the podcast will be released on Tuesdays moving forward. We hope you join us. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high profile and under the radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Today's case is about a con man who was brought down by one of his own victims. Once the victim realized that he had been swindled out of $18,000 and he was never going to get that money back, he dedicated his life to taking down this serial swindler. He started a Facebook page, found more victims, made recordings of the con man incriminating himself. He then took his findings to the police and he wore a wire to get that last bit of evidence against the crook. And it worked. The scammer is now locked up. Adam Albin went from victim to survivor activist, and he documented everything himself in a podcast series called To Catch a Con Man, which is out now.
To Catch a Con Man is the very intimate and detailed true story of exposing one of the most prolific and successful serial con men to operate in the Midwest. A career con man who was able to get away with scamming and stealing in and around the suburbs of Chicago for more than 40 years. What's even more interesting is that he had never been arrested in Illinois for running his scams, some that date as far back as the 1980s.
Could $100,000 sustain my life? It couldn't even come close. So listen to me. If I was going to be in some sort of con, scam, conniving thing, it'd be for millions. It wouldn't be for $100,000.
Police estimate he got away with $20 million. In addition to having Adam on the program today, we have a special guest whom you all know and adore from the hugely popular and successful podcast, Scamanda, which is about a woman who faked her cancer to con people out of their money. Nancy Moscatiello is the producer and investigative journalist behind bringing down Scamanda. Welcome, Nancy and Adam. I am so excited to have you both here. This is fantastic.
Thanks for having us, Anna.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes. And before we get to Adam's case, which is amazing, Nancy, we have to let everyone know that Scamanda has been so popular that it's going to be a docuseries for what, ABC in October?
Yeah, ABC and primetime, and then airing on Hulu the next day, I guess, after each episode.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. You have worked for years on this to catch Scamanda.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, we're here to talk about Adam's case. And what I find fascinating, Adam, when you heard the Scamanda podcast, you reached out to Nancy. You two are like kindred spirits trying to bring down these scammers. What was it about Nancy's podcast that you're like, I need to talk to this woman?
You know, I just felt like the two of us were living a very similar life in two different parts of the country. Here she is chasing Amanda in California. It's 2017, 2018. Here I am in 2018 and 2019 chasing Ricky Dugo. And I just felt like I had this connection. And I was really just seeking out for advice. I was looking for a mentor, somebody that could help me to take my story and really make it a little bit bigger than what I'm capable of. I'm just a regular guy. I'm sitting in the basement of my house. All of this was created here. So I reached out to Nancy, and we've forged this friendship and a partnership, and she's provided me with this awesome advice on what I should be doing.
Nancy, what was it about his case that so resonated with you?
Well, when Adam reached out, he just said, thanks for doing your podcast and what you did to take down Amanda. And we just started talking about what he had been through. And there were so many similarities in, the ups and downs, the roller coaster of trying to get justice, but also, doing it admirably, honestly, straightforward, like really digging in properly. And I was just so impressed on how he went about doing it. It made sense, how he did it, and it was impressive. And I just thought, you know what? When we discussed this, and I had that strong feeling about Amanda that she's going to continue to do this. Like once she's in jail, when she gets out of jail, like I just really feel like some folks just don't give it up, and I think Adam felt the same way about Ricky Dugo. And so when we discussed it, I said, this should be on a larger platform. It should get out there because he will be out in no time. And Anna's viewers need to know about, about this because he was so prolific for so long. And I think, and we'll get to all of that, but it was truly shocking to hear what he was capable of.
And what I find fascinating here is because your Scamanda podcast is just so popular. It's been number one for so long on every single ratings and chart that there is available. Here's the thing. People know your story, Nancy, because you also are a seasoned veteran crime reporter. You, as I call you, crime royalty, true crime royalty, because you have covered everything, worked on every major show that anyone's ever heard of. So, and you're generally behind the scenes. So you know how to tell a story. You know how to get it out there. What I'm so impressed about Adam is without bells and whistles and experience and friends, you have told this authentic story, and you have detailed and you have supporting evidence, and you provide that, and you just take everyone behind the scenes. And that's what I think makes a great podcast is the narrative, your authentic story that you have told. It doesn't matter whether you have bells and whistles, but yes, more people need to know about your podcast.
I appreciate that. Thank you guys so much.
All right, so let's get started here. The convicted scammer here is Rick Dugo, who in 2023 was sentenced to 8 years in prison, and that is where he sits right now. Perhaps he's listening to this. But how he got there is Adam's story to tell. Okay, we did a little bit of a recap at the very top to let people know about this serial scammer, but from your perspective, Adam, how would you describe Rick Dugo? And I want you to tell us who he really is, and then I want you to tell us what he appeared to be to you and why he was able to gain your confidence.
Sure. So Ricky Dugo is one of the most prolific and successful scammers that's ever operated in the Midwest. His victims reach not just in Illinois, but you've got victims in Missouri, you've got victims in Indiana, basically stretching for a lot of this country. Ricky Dugo gave off this image of burgeoning success. So I met him at the gym. Every day he pulls up, he's driving a new $100,000 car. He's dressed, he's wearing Air Jordans, a different pair every day, Under Armour. He's got this jet black dyed hair. He's a larger than life character, Anna. He's a steroid user, admitted steroid user. So he's gigantic. He's just a massive human being, impossible to miss at the gym. And this image, it just helped him to sustain and propagate his cons and scams. Anytime he was able to get away with a sizable scam, it just begat a new scam. It just helped him to get into somebody else's life and eventually to financially most likely devastate them. So
what I find interesting, Adam, is that you met him around 2009, 2010, and it wasn't until 2018 that you handed over money. So in this time period, Nancy, because that's a pretty long period of time to watch someone, observe, consider what you're going to do. What was it that convinced you and changed over this long period of time? Because I would think if I'd known and watched someone for that long and they're still around, that, they're probably legit.
For sure. And between Rick Dugo and myself, I had about 30 mutual connections. So neighbors of his happened to be coworkers of mine. Some of his good friends are friends of mine. So I had all of these connections to him. And as I'm watching the evolution, of our buddyship, it's really just like a gym friendship. I'm not going out with the guy. but I'd see him 5 days, 6 days a week at the gym. He lied in wait. He waited for an opportunity, and that opportunity was pretty specific, and he needed to pounce when he had this opportunity. So I'll give you some information. I'm a very regimented person. So every day I would go to the gym at the same time. So that would be lunchtime. Okay. So on this particular day, I had a conference call that popped into my calendar, and I can't make it to the gym. It's March 22nd, 2018. So I reach out to my wife. I had looked at my afternoon, my night, calendar. I didn't have anything going on. So I decided I was going to go to the gym at this time. This was not my normal time to go to the gym. I get to the gym. It's packed. I mean, the place is hopping. Music's loud. It's all the kids. All the high schoolers are there, drinking their C4 berry bomb and trying to get swole. So I'm a lone wolf. I'm working out by myself, and out of the corner of my eye, I see Ricky Dugo approach, and he starts coming my way. And in that moment, I'm totally isolated. I'm not around my lunchtime crew. I'm not around my lunchtime gym peeps. And he sees that moment in time, realized that I was on my own island, and that was his opportunity to pounce, and pounce he did.
Nancy, I see some similarities, but some differences here where Ricky Dugo presented himself to everyone as being hugely successful. He had money, nice house. He had nice everything, nice cars. With the Scamanda case, we have someone who is preying on people's sympathy, very, very different. What is your opinion of how Ricky Dugo operated?
I mean, from talking with Adam and looking at, the case and stuff, he used the gym, right, as Amanda used the church. Okay. It was his community. It was his familiarity, right? He would come and go from there. So nothing to see here. I'm just the guy who comes and goes. I'm very successful. You put out that, and that is what people believe, right? And, Amanda put out, I'm sick and I'm in need and I need help. And people would come, he did the reverse. I'm very successful. You can trust me. Like, hey, why would you doubt him? He's there. It's not like he went anywhere. He didn't disappear, even as he pounced and slowly manipulated or worked his magic. He really didn't leave the community, which is, pretty bold, but yet doesn't raise the flags because,
Yes, and this is what I
think a scammer would cut and run.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's an art. It's definitely an ability, and it's a craft. And I think that's what we hope, like, people listening and following these types of cases, start to understand, like, there aren't necessarily red flags that you go, oh, wait, something's wrong here. Oh, but he didn't leave the community. He's still here. He's still right with me. There's this dance.
So this raises a question before we get into the case that we know that he was scamming, right? At that time period, he was conning other people out of money. And so you've got an almost 8-year window where you're watching this man. There had to have been other victims. The question is, and if he's working in the community, how is it possible that no one heard of those victims and that nobody came forward and that there wasn't this do you know what I'm saying?
I do. And I can tell you from being a victim what it feels like. When you realize that you've been conned, when you realize that your money is gone, you are filled with an insane amount of guilt. You're ashamed. You don't want to talk about this with anybody. You feel foolish. You should have known better. You know all of these things, and there's no coming back from that. In that moment, you're just thinking, what am I going to do? Like, I'm screwed. Like, what am I going to do? So most of the victims out there did one of two things. They either internalized, never brought it up to anybody, or some of them did actually go to the police and or the FBI and attempted in times past to bring charges and make a case against Ricky Dugo. That's what it feels like. You're filled with an immense amount of shame and guilt, and you feel horrendous. You feel like a moron. And I don't want to feel like a moron. It's terrible, you know? Yeah. So that's how it feels. And that's why most people don't come out, and they're not chit-chatting about it. It's not conversation that comes up at your poker game, you know, or your Flamingo Fridays. You're not talking about getting, you know, financially decimated and losing, you know, most of what you had to the guy that lives next door.
And some people did, right? I mean, some people will hear from some of them the amount of money that they lost. Let's talk about your case, and then we'll talk about some of the others who you included in your podcast. So it's 2018, and you are in Libertyville, Illinois, which is north of Chicago. Is it true that this Ricky's nickname was Thick Rick?
He had many nicknames, Thick Rick being one of them. Slick Rick was another. I guess anything that rhymes with Rick, you know, could really be something that he was called. But yeah, I called him Thick Rick. I mean, that's what other people called him. You know, you have a mutual gym respect, you know, and people give nicknames, you know. He used to call me Big Adam. I'm not a real big guy. I'm in some pretty, you know, I like to think I'm in decent shape, but we give nicknames to one another. It's just a sign of gym respect. It's like a fist bump, you know, you're just blowing up each other's egos. So at the time, that was one of his nicknames, for sure.
So what was the proposition? He made a proposition to you to get you a deal on iPhones. Yeah, what was this offer?
So he approaches me at the gym as I'm working on, and he says, Adam, you know, you're a good friend of mine. I've got this opportunity. It's a business opportunity for you. I've got a friends and family deal. I don't know if you've ever heard of Apt Electronics. If you know anything about Apt, it's like one of the greatest places in all of the Illinois area, all of Chicagoland. It has appliances and electronics. Well, the GM of Apt happens to be one of my best friends and the godfather to one of my children. Once a year, he opens up the warehouse, and I can order anything I want, up to 100 of any make and model of appliance. I can get you TVs. I can get you Apple iPhones, whatever it is that you need. I only offer this to my friends. I've been doing this successfully for 5 years. 5 years I've done this. I haven't had any hitches. You pay me in cash. It's 70% off. I know that sounds crazy. 70% off, and you get your goods in 3 to 5 days. So he pitches this to me while I'm working out. And in my head, I'm going, man, that GM seems like a really good friend. I wish I had somebody like that in my life that would offer me this deal, right? And initially, I declined. Right then and there, I'm like, you know what, Rick, I'm good. I don't need 100 Sub-Zero refrigerators. You know, I'm good. But there was something that he said to me that I couldn't let go of. And in that moment, he had mentioned iPhones. And something about me is that in 2016 and 2017, I had a side hustle. And I'm in technology sales. I sell computers and software and hardware. But I love Apple devices. I love iPads and iPhones. So I was buying used iPhones and iPads and refurbishing them, cleaning them up, wiping the IMEIs, making sure that they were good to go. And I was reselling them to my friends, to my family. Everybody I knew that they could get a very clean phone or iPad from me. I'd make $20 a pop. I wasn't going to retire off this, but I love to sell things. I love the negotiation. So that's the backstory. I had the side hustle. So I'm thinking, okay, and I'm looking down at my phone after I got home that night, and I'm like, you know, it would be nice to upgrade my iPhone 7 to an iPhone 10. And at the time, those were, you know, $999 phones, and his deal was $320 a phone. You know, and I'm looking at him going, okay, I've known this guy for like 10 years. I see him every day. You know, it didn't really cross my mind that I was going to fall victim to a career criminal.
And so how much money did you give him? And what was the understanding?
So the understanding at first was 5 iPhones. It was going to be for my family. But then that kept on blowing up. he kept on planting seeds and saying, if you need any more, I can get you up to, 100 units. He's like, but I'm going to take 5 of those units for myself. So I've got room for you. He had told me initially that he had another guy that was going in on 40. So he had room, for 30 to, 50 units. And at the time I'm thinking, that's going to be a lot of money. I initially committed to 5 phones, gave him the money for the 5 phones. He plants the seed that he can get me more, up to 30, he said that day. So I went back to him that night and said, I'd take another 5. No problem, Adam. I can get you another 5. And then in that same text string, he's like, if you need any more, I've got room. So I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'll take 30 phones. So 30 phones at that time was like $9,600. I'd already paid him, $1,600. I owed him $8,000. So I paid him the next day, the $8,000. And at that meetup, he was cool. He takes the cash, no big deal. And then he calls me later that night and he's in a tizzy. Oh, the guy that took 40 phones, he's backed out of the deal. I've already committed to those 40 phones on my order with apt. If I can't cover, this whole deal is going to be in jeopardy. So he's instilling fear. And
that you're going to lose your original investment or there's going to be a delay.
He's making it sound like I'm going to lose my money, that he's going to lose his money, and he doesn't have any more cash. So I'll back up a step and say his deal, the way that he positioned this is that he buys 80 TVs for this bar owner in the city of Chicago. And in this 3 to 5 day deal, he makes $150,000. So he's freaking out, going, I'm gonna lose out on all this money. He's like, I've got all like this other money committed. I need you to help me out. I'm in a real bind here. So I start to think, I'm like, I don't have that kind of money. I don't have, $32,000 to buy all 100 phones. And at the time I was thinking, another 40 phones, man, that's a huge outlay of cash. And I needed some time to think. So he called me back about a half hour later. He's like, I really need to know what you're going to do here. And I go, Rick, I don't have another $12,000 in cash just sitting around. And he said, well, that's fine. He goes, I'll go in on this with you. I found some money, $5,500 of my money, $7,300 of your money. That'll get you 70 iPhones. He's like, you can pay me back as soon as I get them to you. No big deal. And at that time, I felt like he was backing me into a corner. I felt like I didn't have an out here. I felt pressured. And so I thought about it and I'm like, well, I don't really have a move. So I went all in and I got him the money. And his commitment to me was 70 iPhones at this point. And he had about 17,000 and change of my money. A couple days later, he calls me again in a tizzy. He's short on the deal. He needs another $1,800. If he doesn't come up with, I think he needed $2,500. But he's asking me if I can cover some of this. And I'm at this point, I'm like totally pot committed. I've got no more cash laying around. I'm like, Rick, I'm done, man. I got nothing else to throw at this deal. Well, Adam, you're such a stand-up guy. If you can just get me another $1,800, I'll get you all the phones. He's like, you'll make a killing. I didn't know what to do. I'm totally out of cash. My rainy day cash fund is completely depleted. All the money that I had saved as just funny money is now gone. I'm working on this humongous deal at work. So I'm not really like thinking about this whole phone thing, 100%. And I'm just like, there's not a whole lot to do here. So I'm like, if I take this money out, Rick, it's going to come out of my kid's savings account. I'm like, that's terrible. He's like, well, I completely get it, Adam. I get it. I understand, but I need this. It'll get us across the line. I'll get you your phones in 2 to 3 days now. So I was like, okay, man. And the next day I went to the bank. I pulled out $1,800 from my kid's savings account. I still feel terrible that I did that today. So all in $18,700 of my money with the promise of 95 iPhones in the end. None of that came to fruition.
And Ana, when you hear Adam say it, I mean, I understand why, it's hard to come forward, right? Because I see some red flags, but if I'm in it at that moment, what Dugo did was he put it back on Adam. There's that pressure, there's that fear, and then he puts his own skin in the game, right? Dugo says, well, I'm going to help. I'm going to put my money in too. So we're both going to be out money if we don't get this going. Like, so there's just this subtle, I'm in it too, Adam. Like, don't let this happen type of thing. So I get how, and there's so much going on, and it's always a half hour later, like he's barraging them to stay in the game and not, they're on the hook and he doesn't want them off.
No, and the fear of losing what you have already given, I think, is what's really, I would say, would be my motivator. I'd be like, geez, how am I going to explain this? I'm, 18,000 or less into this. And now, a few, $1,000 more, $1,800 more, I can not lose everything.
Yeah.
And there is a logic to it. It's a twisted one, but there is a logic to it, right? And so at some point, though, you realized, Adam, and we're going to get to this pivotal moment in your podcast and also in your investigation of this, he kept saying to you, don't worry, your money is safe. I won't F you.
Absolutely.
And he did.
100% he did.
And while seeing him on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
It's not like he took the 18,000 and left town. He's boldly pulling up in these cars, he's boldly, I'm here working out. Everyone still thinks, wow, this Rick is amazing.
I'm literally bumping into him at the gym, literally bumping into him at the gym. Look, he's looking me straight in the face going, I would never screw you over, Adam. Your money's good. I promise. We're friends. I'm not going anywhere.
Unbelievable. So you end up recording this phone conversation with Rick. It was one of your confrontations with him. There is a lot of strong language in this. And we had a discussion. If we bleeped it all, you probably wouldn't hear a lot of the conversation. So for those of you who might be offended, this is your opportunity to turn away or turn the volume down if you don't want to hear this. So there is some strong language. And what's really important about this also that I was extremely impressed with, and I'm sure Nancy was as well, you did your research on the state of Illinois and surreptitious recording because, in the state of Illinois, it's a two-party consent, which means everyone in this conversation has to give permission to record it or it is a felony. So, but there is a loophole in the law in Illinois that says what was the easiest way for you to describe this that made it possible and legal for you to do this?
If you believe that the party that you want to record is about to has committed a crime, and you want to record this as evidence, that is the one exemption. So I did a lot of research on it. I didn't consult anyone, but this was really early on. This is just after I created the Facebook spoof page.
Oh, we're going to get to that. Okay. So for those of you who are only listening, this was actually videotaped, and Adam is in his car and he's talking to Rick on speaker, and that's how he recorded it. Just for those of you who are listening. All right, let's play this clip.
Just tell me you're going to give me my fucking money back. That's all I want.
You've already heard that from me. How many more times do you want to hear it? I'm telling you, I'm going to try this one more time, Colm, as an acquaintance of yours. You will 100% get anything you've given to me back.
When?
Let me finish, please. Okay. What's not going to happen is I'm not going to speak about the contents of it for your good and mine.
Unbelievable. He's still telling you that you are going to get your money back, which of course you've never gotten back. Never gotten back.
Never. Not a single penny. Not 14 cents on his life.
So he was especially agitated. This is the amazing thing, Nancy. If anybody should be agitated here, it should be Adam and not Rick the scammer. But here Rick is turning the tables and sharing with you how agitated he is because of some Facebook page and that he's gone to the cops and they better take it down. He's going to sue. And I'm like, really? Like he's the wronged party here. So you start this.
He has no and Adam, well, this I want him to explain, but Dugo has no idea that this Facebook page, obviously, that Adam is the person behind it at this point. Because Adam, laid the groundwork to con a con man. And that's how all this, how he got to the point. So go ahead, Adam, tell him, how we got there.
So how we got to this point is I had decided early on. So I knew that things were not what they seemed to be with Rick Dugo about 6 days in to him taking my money. I happened to ask the coworker, that's one of his neighbors, if Rick Dugo was still living where he was living. And Rick had responded, or my coworker had responded, why? And I said, have you ever given him money? My coworker then goes on to tell me that in 2017, he had given Rick Dugo a sum of money as an investment on an electronics deal. So 6 days into all of this, I know that there's two of us. I confront Rick with the information. He literally blows a gasket, telling me I better watch myself. Why am I talking about this with anybody? If I continue to talk about it, things are not going to go very well. So I'm on to him. Fast forward about 6 weeks. My coworker, who sits across the wall from me at work, shows me his phone. On his phone, there's a Google alert, and it comes up as, don't get scammed by Ricky Dugo. Somebody anonymously had posted a story that was a repost of a gentleman from the Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, who back in 2017 had posted on his Facebook page, don't get scammed by Ricky Dugo. And this post goes in to tell about how this tattoo artist from the Lake of the Ozarks was the victim of a scam by Rick Dugo. And not only did he lose money, but his girlfriend lost money. Other members of the tattoo parlor lost money. So he posts up on his Facebook page asking if anybody else has been scammed. Within 2 days, this post by Russell James Fisk attracts about 22 people. And in the end, it's about $2.2 million that he had come up with. And this is Lake of the Ozarks in 2017. So this don't get scammed Google alert that my friend and coworker shows me is a repost of that. And so in that moment, I knew that it wasn't just the two of us. All of a sudden, somebody anonymously posts that there's all these other victims. So I call the guy that introduced me to Rick back in 2009. He's a good friend of mine. And I'm like, listen, I've got something really embarrassing I need to ask you. I need to ask you about your buddy, Rick Dugo. He stops me. He goes, oh no. He goes, you're the third person to call me this week, Adam. Please tell me you didn't give him any money. And I'm like, oh, like, are you kidding me? Like, he's like, listen, I'm really sorry that this happened. I'm going to give you a phone number. He gives me a name and a phone number of another guy to call who happens to be in Lake County. He thinks another one of his buddy, Brad, fell prey to Rick Dugo as well. So I'm shaking. I go outside of my office. I call Brad. Hey, Brad, you don't know me. So-and-so, is a buddy of ours. Do you know the name Rick Dugo? He stops. Of course I know. I gave him, $28,000 3 years ago. And he's still asking me, he's still calling me and texting me saying he's going to pay me back and he's going to get me what he owes me. So at this point it's now May 29th, 2018. We're, 7 weeks after he's taken my money, giving me this pitch. I have this epiphany. Holy crap, I'm not alone. And so I was stewing. And I had been stewing. I hadn't been sleeping. I hadn't been eating. I was moody. My work was being affected. I was completely stressed out. I was at the point in my life where I had used up all the money that I had, all this extra money, and there could be a time and place that I actually miss in a mortgage payment or a credit card bill. And I'm totally stressed out. And that was never who I was. So I decided I needed to do something about this. I couldn't sit and just take this, and I wanted to change the narrative, and so I created a Facebook profile of Rick Dugo. The reason I created a Facebook profile of Rick Dugo is because back in 2018, Ricky Dugo is an internet ghost. He doesn't exist. He's got no social media footprint, no Instagram, no Facebook. There's no articles out there except for a single article that was a memorandum of an older court case in which a humongous $460,000 cigarette boat goes missing. So I had been doing some due diligence in between, and I couldn't find anything out there. There was no record of Rick Dugo. It was like any information about him had been erased.
Well, most con people do not have a big social media footprint. In fact, it's very hard to find stuff on them, except it's the flip side for
Amanda, right?
For Amanda, because she needed that social media footprint of her fake cancer journey in order to raise money. So, I mean, I just love the email address that you used for this. What was the email address? Because I loved it.
So the email address that was my repository was connedbyrick@gmail.com. So on these,
good point.
I mean, because again, that was the first thing that I did as I started to have to create this master plan of how I was going to take him down. The first thing that I needed an email alias, connedbyrick@gmail.com. I needed to ensure that I would be completely cloaked in anonymity. So what I did was I created this spoof page of Rick Dugo. The spoof page is basically, I took a picture that I found online of him under his wife's profile page on Facebook. I added a cigarette boat, a 46-foot cigarette boat in the background. And on his profile page, my message to the world was, if anybody has given Rick Dugo sums of money with a triple your money back guarantee, please email connedbyrick@gmail.com.
So as a result of this Facebook page, you start hearing from so many other victims. What is interesting to me here, Nancy, is that the scams are kind of the same, but what he's selling is different. Like what was he conning people for?
Yeah. I mean, for Adam, it was like he tailored it to whoever he was dealing with. Adam explained to me at one point, Nancy, it wasn't just us at the gym. It was, ex-girlfriends. It was family members. It was family members of ex-girlfriends, people that were working for Rick, that were looking up to him to be trained with him. And just so you have an idea, it was people taking out loans, Rolexes, loans for Rolexes, signing off on boats and cars and, mortgages and you name it. He tailored it to how he knew you or, how he came across you and what you were interested in. I mean, the trail of women behind him, that's like the Romeo con, as they say, they ingratiate these great relationships and then, oh, hey, honey, I'd love to get that Rolex. Oh, I don't have my wallet on me. Whatever it was, he was masterful at it. And it racked up. It didn't matter who you were.
Right.
He figured it out. And I think, the car wash, I want Adam to explain that, because to me, that was like a whole nother type of scam. I mean, Adam used the phrase once when we were talking, rinse and repeat scams. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. Like, he would just take the same scam and tailor it to each person, changing the dynamic and explain the car washes.
Yeah, I think once he assessed how much somebody was worth, he would pitch them, something a little bit different. He was a chameleon. The car wash scams were a partnership deal where Ricky Dugo would sell himself as the owner of 6 car washes. So when he pitches his cons to me, up to the years that I got to know him, he was the owner of 6 car washes in the city, making $600,000 a year. He plain out told me this. So the car wash deal is, if you had enough money, he would pitch you on an opportunity to invest in his newest car wash. He was opening one up down the road. He was going to open one up at Trump Tower. So he was looking for ground level investments on people that wanted to go in on these car wash deals. Not only were they car washes, but then he had a really innovative soap polymer business. He had this invention, an innovative soap
An
polymer.
invention.
An
Yeah.
invention that he was going to revolutionize the car wash industry. So he pitched some of these scams, and he pitched this one. This was a definitely, no pun intended, rinse and repeat. He got 10, 20, 30 people to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars with him, maybe millions, in these fictitious car wash partnerships.
Oh,
But
this
tell
is just
Anna,
awful.
this was great. You said one of the victims explained to you going to the car wash and how the employees, because there were car washes he would take people to.
So the interesting thing is that Rick had a couple friends that owned actual car washes. And Rick would take prospective investors, people, victims that he was conning. He would take them to these car washes. And I don't know if he shipped these guys $20, but he would literally park the car, come on back with his, whoever this prospective victim was going to be. And the employees were calling him boss. Hey, boss man. They're high-fiving him. And Rick is literally acting like he owns the joint. And everybody that's working there, they're acting like he does own the joint. So all this does is it emboldens.
It reinforces the, right?
Exactly. So it makes him look absolutely legitimate.
Yeah.
So he did that on multiple occasions. Crazy.
So the people who are on your podcast, Adam, they have changed their names, and understandable. There are a lot of feelings that and things that people are processing beyond just the loss of the money, which is huge. So you interview an earlier victim of Rick's, a former girlfriend named Ana Marie, and he had promised her a deal on some Rolex watches. That was that scam.
Rolex washes, $25,000 in cash. She had taken him on an all expense paid trip to Florida.
She paid for it.
She paid for it. She bought herself a Corvette to match his. He wanted her to have a matching Corvette. This was all within 1 month of meeting him.
We're going to play this clip because this is Ana Marie describing how she first met Rick in Las Vegas.
It was 1999, and it was Labor Day weekend in Las Vegas. I was there with a group of friends. I met Rick Dugo, as you call him. I met him as Rick Schulte. He was funny, not my type, this big man that, obviously worked out, and we called him a meathead back then. And but he was funny, and to have that physique and be funny was, I think, the extraordinary part of him, because it wasn't like he was this tough guy. He was goofy, more or less. So, and we had fun. But I think what was also something that brought us to him as a whole is he was Mr. Wine and Dine. He paid for everything, and we were young. We were 24 years old. And we had fun. And it literally turned into a crazy nightmare after that trip.
What ended up happening to Ana Marie?
So she started to see some red flags. She started to kind of like snoop around, like when she was with him. He would leave her at his house with his mom and his sister. And if she left the house, he always knew where she went. So it was like the mom and the sister were like keeping tabs on her. And she's just thought this is pretty bizarre. And finally, her mom and her dad actually hired a private investigator. They're like, there's something wrong with you. she was doing all of these things that she would never do. He had started to control all aspects of her life. First, it was the financial. Now he's keeping tabs on her. He's dropping into work every day. He's always around. And she just started to, just see some things. And she wasn't taking the advice of her friends who were like, we don't know what you see in this guy. And she was making these changes. And finally, she just had this epiphany that, something's wrong here. Like, this isn't right. This isn't natural. And he started to put it back on her. I never put a gun to your head. I never made you do any of this. I'm not sure if you know, but, my dad's in the mob. I'm not sure if your family are going to be really all that safe if he finds out what you've done if you leave me. So he starts to make these threats, these claims, and she was scared. She was scared. And fortunately for her, her parents helped her to get back on track. They hired a private investigator. Supposedly her mother went to the FBI. And that's what happened to Ana.
Oh my goodness. Just so sad.
And when Adam interviews her for the podcast, like, she's very raw, very, genuine, and she just talks and she realizes, she's like, I don't know how I got to that place. It's a very raw interview, and they really open up about what it's like. And I think that's what's important for people to hear, so others out there don't feel so alone if they're going through something similar. Because it's shame. If there's shame and guilt and a lot of things that go on.
Yeah. No, understandable.
It's not just the financial piece of it. There's emotion. There's this psychological, it just puts you through like this whole, it's really hard to explain, but you literally.
Well, it's constant manipulation.
Yeah.
It's really manipulation. It is, you are tricked and it's turned on you, and there's gaslighting. I mean, it's just everything possible that you could do. It's psychological warfare without question how he manages. So at this point, you have recorded him, you have done the Facebook page, and then, again, you're trying to get attention for this, and you're trying to get media attention, and you end up doing a story, a report with the CBS station in Chicago. And the reporter there is Dorothy Tucker, and she did an amazing job on this case. And we're going to play a clip in a second, but I want to ask you one question, because I, as a reporter, Nancy, as a reporter, people call us all the time. And it's not that I don't believe you. I'll say, where is the supporting evidence? Because if you don't have the supporting evidence, it's going to make it very hard to go out on a limb and publicly accuse someone if there isn't a police report or a lawsuit. So I'm curious what you were met with, Adam, when you tried to get reporters to pay attention to you.
I went out for media exposure after Rick was arrested. I sent emails to every major outlet in Chicago Tribune, ABC 7, Channel 5, Chicago Channel 2, WGN, Fox News Chicago. Nobody responds. So a friend of mine, one of my confidants, and we do some due diligence, and he's like, you know what, you got to check out this investigative reporter. I think maybe she could help you out. And he sends me a link, and it's Dorothy Tucker, and it's talking about another serial scammer named Candace Clark. And I watch all these videos. Anyway, I send Dorothy Tucker the exact same thing that I sent to everybody else, but I sent her a personal message. I said, Ricky Dugo's been arrested. He's been charged, with 6 felonies, and there's 0 media exposure. And I'm looking for a partner. I'm looking for somebody that can help me and dig in on this story. I'll provide you whatever support that you need. I'll give you access to victims. I'll give you access to my information. So her and I forged a partnership and a friendship, and she was instrumental in helping me. Her and Dorothy Tucker and Carol Thompson, her producer, were amazing to work with. They came out with 6 exposés. Some of them were smaller vignettes. Some of them were larger stories. But she was fearless, a complete bulldog. She approaches Rick. She got in his face. She did some really great work. So I had to have that. I needed a partner because Lake County at that time did not issue any press release. I was promised a press release so that we could get enough exposure to warn all of the neighbors in the Chicagoland area that, hey, Ricky Dugo is a serial con man. He's living in our backyards. Like, be careful out there. And she was the one that could help me take it to the next level.
She really is amazing. She confronts Rick Dugo. It's incredible. She confronts him. It looks like it's in front of his home. And then she also gets video of him arriving at court. You see him standing outside, where you go through security. Let's play the clip. This is from CBS in Chicago.
I talked to so many people that say that they've been scammed by you.
It's a lie, but that's why.
What do you mean it's a lie?
For me, looking at that video, he really is an imposing figure when he puts that face on, right? For those of you who are listening, trust me, it's scary face. Mm-hmm. And he is just really staring down that camera as he's going through security in the courtroom. He's an intimidating dude when he wants to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's a monster of a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really huge. Okay, so now I want to talk about how you got him. Adam, you go to the police, you have a lot of documentation, you have a lot of victims. Did you expect them to truly take you seriously this time?
I was hopeful that they would just take my information and, make a couple phone calls, and do some interviews. And in a couple weeks, he'd be arrested. The problem with this is that investigators, like Detective Bill will tell you, that investigators are always skeptical. They always want to do their own due diligence. Part of the problem is that this man had been so prolific in conning and scamming. I don't think that they were prepared for the next 2.5 years. So I call it the Dugo domino effect. And what I mean by that is when you talk to a victim and you hear their story, they say, you know what, you may want to go and talk to, Joe down the street. He acts a little weird around Dugo. Maybe he was con. And so the officers and the investigators would go and talk to that person. By the end of their investigation, Lake County had a witness list and people of interest, people close to the story. It was 178 people on their list that they had talked to. They had gone to every county in Illinois, Cook County, Lake County, McHenry County, DuPage County, everywhere around here. They talked to the Missouri State's Attorney General down there. They went out to Arizona. They interviewed people in Las Vegas, in the Carolinas. I don't think that they really understood how big of a con artist this man was. I made a very broad claim when I met with them saying he is a serial criminal. He's a serial con man. But that's a pretty bold claim to make. And of course they're going to be looking at me like, yeah, sure. Like if that was in our area, like we'd know about it, right? Well, I'm going to tell you something. Nobody knew about this guy. Nobody around here was talking about it. How could Rick Dugo not be on anybody's radar? That's the question.
Yes, that's a good question. So, Adam, give me the time frame so I can follow here. From the time you went to the police until the time they're ready to arrest him, how long did that take, and why did they need you to get more evidence against him?
So the time frame from the time I went to the police, the time he was actually arrested is 2.5 years. Wow. They were bumping up against the statutes of limitations towards the end, and there's a plethora of reasons why. They had asked me if I was interested in continuing on and helping them build the case. And I said, for sure, whatever it is that you need. Because in the background, all of a sudden, I'm the guy. People want to talk to me. Because I'm a victim of Rick Dugo, I have instant rapport. So they recognized that. So we started kind of just sharing leads and information. And before you knew it, they're asking me to come in, can I come in and take a look at some pictures? Can I come and look at, some documentation? Can we try to do some overhears? And I said, absolutely, whatever it is that you need. This aligned with my goals. My sole goal was to get this man arrested, get him off the street so that he couldn't do this to anybody else. I didn't care about my money at this point. It didn't matter. I was going to get my money's worth. And what I had on him was a lifetime of crime and deceit, and I had to do something about it. And so I was full on, man. I was,
So they ask you to meet him in a public place, right? You're already wired for sound.
Yeah.
There are cops undercover.
Yes.
Right, surrounding it, so nothing bad happens to you. Nancy and I talked at work before this podcast, and both of us who are used to doing this, there's always a huge level of anxiety and risk when you go to confront someone, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and we're used to,
and we're used to it.
It go down, not
but for you
wearing a wire. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a level of stress and anxiety that's unexplainable. It took a while. It took a bunch of big deep breaths, but what I found was that I could take the victims' stories, I could take all of their voices and everything I'd heard up until that point, and I harnessed all of that. And it was like this synergy came together as I'm standing, in this parking lot, surrounded by plainclothed officers that are, doing surveillance in their vehicles. And I'm standing toe to toe with this monster. I used all of that power in every story that I heard to overcome the anxiety. I didn't feel stressed out, I just felt like I felt like David slaughtering Goliath. It was my opportunity, and I had to do whatever was possible to ensure that we got the result. And that's what I did.
And what was the result? What did the police say they needed to hear Ricky Dugo say?
Well, you never know where the conversation is going to go first and foremost. I didn't even know if he was going to talk to me. There was a good chance he was going to look at me and walk right by me. Fortunately, I had positioned my vehicle so I was right next to him, and basically I could not use or could not say anything that was quid pro quo. I had to watch what I said. I couldn't say anything that was tit for tat. I couldn't say, hey, if you pay me back, I'm not going to go to the authorities. So it had to be a very natural conversation. And that's what the advice from law enforcement was, just to be myself, to be me. And so, I started off that conversation and, he's like, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm looking for you. And he said, how'd you find me? I said, it's not important. You're not that hard to find, And then he goes into, you seem confused. Why don't I take you out to the back of Lifetime Fitness and unconfuse you? I'll even let you throw the first punch.
Oh,
so
boy.
He's getting into this.
He's threatening you.
He's threatening me. And I knew that all of this was going to happen. I had prepared myself mentally and potentially physically. And I just needed something to diffuse the situation. And by a stroke of good luck, in the moment that he's getting heated and his veins are throbbing and his eyes are bloodshot and he's yelling and screaming in this parking lot, two of my old export friends and workout buddies walk out of Lifetime Fitness and they're like, hey, Adam, how's it going? And in that moment, I think Dugo realized that he's in a parking lot, that there's other people, there could be cameras. He doesn't want anything to really go down. I think he's just huffing and puffing and he wants to blow his house down. And it diffused the situation. And then he starts to go into this whole thing about if I had a guy that had 100 microwaves and he's going into this whole microwave thing. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, it's almost like gibberish. And I'm going, I don't know what you're talking about microwaves from. I didn't buy microwaves from you. And it was a moment that I had this clarity. It was a moment, Anna, where I saw that all of the pressure and all of the public exposure and all of the things I had done in the background were finally tearing him down. In that moment, he went off script and he couldn't remember what he what he conned me for.
Wow.
And I wasn't about to
Could you imagine?
I know. Extraordinary.
So many cons. He couldn't remember, what he did to Adam.
So
horrible. So the amazing thing is you apparently got what it is that police thought was important in the last piece of evidence. And does he get arrested on the spot?
No, he does not.
Oh.
That's August of 2018. He did eventually say in that overhear that he had my money, that he was going to pay me back and start a payment plan. But no, he was not arrested right then and there. In fact, I never heard that overhear. I didn't hear it until 2022. So he wasn't arrested for quite some time. There were.
So he's arrested in 2021. He's
Correct.
charged with felony theft for defrauding 4 people of almost $1 million. Then he's
Correct.
indicted by a Lake County grand jury of additional charges of money laundering. Finally, Rick goes to trial in November of 2022. I guess, were there going to be a total of 4 trials? Is that how it was going to be done? Each victim had their own trial?
So not initially. Initially, it would have been 3 trials for the 3 initial victims. There were 6 charges initially. And then about 6-8 months later, there was a subsequent 6 charges on a single victim. Rick had decided early on, after he was arrested, as he's going to court, that he wanted to separate those cases. He asked the judge to do that. So potentially he was looking at 4 different trials is what he elected. And then he also didn't want jury trials. He elected for bench trials. And that's what he went through with. I thought it was a huge mistake, but he separated those trials. So we had 4 bites at the apple. We had 4 chances to take him down. And my case went up first.
Yours goes up first. And of course, you testify, you provide all sorts of evidence, text messages, all your communications, everything you've done, the police stuff. And he gets convicted.
Yeah, he gets convicted. Amazing.
Was that the moment for you?
It was a pretty wild ride. So the way that happened was, I happened to ask to be included in closing arguments. I wanted to listen in to the closing arguments of the case. I go to Lake County on that day. I'm sitting in the courtroom. Closing arguments commences and ends. I figured that the judge was just going to adjourn and give us like he'd come back with a decision in 2-3 days, a couple of weeks. You know how it is in the court system. So, but that's not what happened. Instead, the judge goes right into his verdict, and he tells me straight up, or he announces, that in the 2 charges that were in my case, on the first charge of theft, he found Rick not guilty, and my heart sank. I nearly had him. He said, Ricky Dugo did not go into my pockets and steal the money out of my pockets. I willingly gave Ricky Dugo the money. He says, however, as soon as he said, however, I knew what the end result was going to be. However, in the charge of theft by deception, I absolutely find Ricky Dugo to be guilty of that charge. It was an act that was completely shrouded in a deep level of deception. And in that moment, I knew. On top of that, he says, I'm immediately remanding his bond, and he will go immediately to the Lake County Jail. And that's a huge moment in this case. So to your point, yes, that's the moment. Because in that moment that the judge remands him, revokes his bond and sends him directly to jail, in that moment, Ricky Dugo could know one thing, that whatever was going to happen at sentencing, it wasn't going to be pretty, that he was most likely going to be heading to prison.
What a moment. I get chills.
Could you imagine? Yeah.
What's surreal about this moment is that I'm looking around the courtroom. I am the only civilian there to see any of this. As he's taking out his shoelaces and he's undoing his tie and he's emptying everything out of his pockets, I hadn't noticed, but the presence of Lake County sheriffs had multiplied like gremlins. All of a sudden, there's 3 of them to help him up. I'm taking these mental pictures as he's being, escorted, handcuffed out of the courtroom. I'm the only guy that has seen this.
And I don't even think he probably suspected that would happen in any way, shape, or form. But it took, look how long that took. I know we all think, things get wrapped up in a bow and handled so quickly, and it just takes time and it takes perseverance. And, the theft by deception was something I think, Adam learned over time of trying to get help. And I think the other victims as well, to be told this is a civil matter, this is, it was a bad business deal. Why did, you shouldn't have given the money, right? That's hard to hear. And I think that's what kept a lot of the victims like, oh, this is on me, this is on me. And until Adam thought, well, wait a minute, this isn't okay. This was deception. And why isn't this, why isn't there something in place? And there was. It just took a lot of convincing on Adam's part to prove it and show the powers that be that, please do something and here's how you can do it. It's remarkable.
It is remarkable, Nancy. It really, you have, Adam, you have done what very few people can do, what even teams of lawyers may try and do, or an organized group that has knowledge of the law. You literally took down this man who really took down so many other people in their lives, which is so commendable. It's such an amazing case. I do have just a few more questions on this. So he has to go to jail immediately. He loses his freedom immediately upon that conviction. So at sentencing, when you see him at sentencing, he's looking rather different, isn't he?
Man, it was, he looked busted up and broken. And I felt so fantastic about the whole thing. I think for me, that was when it felt really good. He walks in the courtroom, he's shackled, he's got shackles on his feet, gone is his jet black dyed hair. Instead, he's got this, jail style, terrible haircut. He's gray, he's lost 30 pounds. The dude looked like he aged like 30, 40 years in a matter of 6 weeks. I'd never seen a change like that in a human being. He wasn't on his steroids, so he's deflated. So now you see who he really is. This is the sheep in wolf's clothing, right? Underneath it all, this is who he really is. I took great pride in seeing that, and I still do.
I bet. So he ends up, what happens to the other cases? Because my understanding is he ends up getting 8 years. What
Correct.
Was the deal?
So the deal was he pled out the other. So there would have been a remaining 3 court cases, of which he would have been up for another 10 total charges. So instead of going through with 3 more court cases, he elected to plead this out. He pleads it out to 1 Class 1 felony. And a Class 1 felony in Illinois is like a minimum of like 7 to 14 years. However, in actuality, his 8-year sentence is what he accepted as his plea. Because it's a nonviolent crime in Illinois, he only would have to serve potentially up to 4 years.
So where is he on the radar about getting out?
Yeah, so he keeps on getting extra credit. He's currently on work release in Lawndale, Illinois. A couple days ago, I had checked the IDOC, Illinois Department of Corrections, and he looks to be getting out in August of 2025, which would put this at about 2.5 years of his 8-year sentence. Now, I suspect that will be changed more than a couple times, and he'll probably be out before you know it.
Wow. Are you worried about him getting out and your safety?
I am not. Most victims, it's one of the reasons that they wanted to change their names and identities. I have nothing to fear. I faced him. I stood face to face with him in a parking lot. I looked at him while I was on the stand, telling my truths. I have nothing to fear. My story's the truth.
Nancy, I don't have any words.
Yeah, that's not easy to do. And I completely understand feeling confident as Adam is, because that's how I feel in my situation with Amanda. People say, well, when she gets out, she's getting out. She's getting out. I said, well, yeah. It's nice to feel that way, but I do understand victims that don't want to be involved, or they want people to know, but they also want to feel safe, because it's not an easy thing to overcome. I mean, there's the casualty is not just financial. It really is deep. And in the podcast, you hear it from so many victims that he spoke with. And, there's the second season is every episode is a different victim, really just raw and truthful. And it's really something to listen to understand just how wounded people are from things like this, because it doesn't seem on its face, he's just a con man, but it's way more than that. I think our society doesn't feel the weight of that as much as if it's a violent crime or something like that. But it does take its toll on many, many people when you go through something like this.
30 years later, it's still affecting how people think today, how they act, who they trust, who they don't. There are ramifications that extend far, far and wide, and they're way more significant than the financial piece. Most of us that are financial crime victims, we recover. I'm not giving up. I'm going to continue to work, continue to make money. I'll be in a really good place in like 8 or 9 years, right?
Wait a minute. Adam, is there restitution as part of this sentence?
There is. However, because Rick doesn't have a single asset in his name, he will not be paying. My guess is that he won't pay back the $145,000, which would get split between 4 victims. Really, that's peanuts. If I wanted to go after him, I would have to file a civil suit, hire an attorney, file a civil suit, and garnish his wages. And I plan to do that. I mean, as soon as he's out, and as soon as he gets his job, I'm going to stick it to him again. I'm going to continue to do this. I'm never going to give up my hunt for him, because if it can prevent just one more victim from falling prey, then I've done my job.
But he's never had a job, right? According to some audio that I listened to from.
Yeah, I mean,
right. His only job has been to con people. He's never held a job, and he's made all of this money, which is estimated by the police at perhaps $20 million. And that is how he has survived and had his life, which is insane. Yeah. And we've only touched the surface here today, because really you've got 2 seasons of To Catch a Con Man, and we have only really touched the surface here. Yeah. And there's so much more. If you all are interested in this, we're going to link to it so y'all can hear the 2 seasons of Adam's podcast. This has just been amazing. I thank you, both of you, for coming on the program today. Adam, where can people follow you? And beside linking to your podcast, any other place where people can find you and what you're up to?
I'm old school. I'm on Facebook. You can send me a Facebook message. You can shoot me an email to conbyrick@gmail.com.
The email's still good. I love it.
Oh, yeah. I still get emails. I do.
Since the podcast, there's more victims, there's more people, right? So it's amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, I've got an Instagram under, To Catch a Con Man. I'm old school though, I've done
old school works.
All this is done by word of mouth. And that's the amazing thing, I've been really fortunate that so many people have enjoyed this, have shared it, have gone to bat for me. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be on with you, Anna. Nancy, it's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. I could talk to you for days. It's
wonderful.
Nice. So thank you.
And congratulations to you for this accomplishment, because this is huge. And Nancy and I truly understand how difficult and what an accomplishment this is, because the system is not friendly to victims. It's just not. And Nancy, okay, Scamanda's coming out in October, the docuseries. I love it. I can't wait to see this. I'm so excited for you. Nancy, where can people follow you?
I created an Instagram I was old school too. And I said, I probably should have this, because so many people have been so kind reaching out since Scamanda. With more tips and more stories. So it's just at Nancy Moscatiello on Instagram.
Excellent. And we will link to everything for everyone. You can, of course, find this podcast where, this episode, all our episodes, wherever you get your podcasts. Our social media is pretty simple. We've made it finally simple for everyone at My True Crime News. So you can find us on all platforms. You can find me at Anna G News, Anna with one N. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, or also you can set up to get our newsletter at truecrimenews.com. We've also got TV show coming out in the fall, True Crime News. Nancy and I are working on that. So it's going to be fun and it's going to be great. So we're very excited about that. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I am your host, Ana Garcia. This is True Crime News, the podcast. And until next time, as we always say, don't do crime.